All right, more to come here on Fox 5 News this morning. Coral Academy is moving to full-time in-person learning next week. Fox 5's Dylan Kendrick is checking in on the progress of that. Dylan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Starting next week, students here at the Sandy Ridge location will have the option to return for full-time learning. So we're going to check in with the principal here and just get a feel for how they're getting preparations done ahead of those extra students making their way back. It's next. And Coral Academy's Sandy Ridge location preparing to introduce more scientists, engineers, techies, mathematicians back to the classroom. I'll talk about the prep that goes in to getting those extra brains back into the classroom.
Well, Coral Academy's Sand Ridge location is gearing up to welcome back all students for full-time in-person learning starting next week.
All right, our Dylan Kendrick is there this morning to show us how they're getting ready. Monday's going to be a big morning there. Dylan.
Yeah, and it's just one of those days that I know students are looking forward to, getting back into the classroom. Maybe parents a little more, get them out the house, right? So I got Yolanda here, the principal over here at the Sandy Ridge location. Let's talk about preparation. You're about to, welcome back these students. That's extra traffic. Of course, there's safety precautions that go into that as well. Go ahead and tell us what that's all about.
We've spent the last few weeks welcoming about 190 students every Wednesday. And in order to prep for that, you really go into the same preparation as you would for more students. So every classroom is fully stocked. We've got hand sanitizer and wipes and all the things that go into welcoming kids into a classroom. And really just the spatial part of it, making sure that they stay 3 feet apart, that they're wearing their masks. So we've been prepared for a little while now, and we're just looking forward to seeing more faces.
Nice. And you told me off camera this morning when I met you a number. You said how many students are actually interested and want to come back. They've committed. What is that number?
We have 245 students currently who are committing to come back. And we're hopeful that more students will, once they realize that their friends are back, and that they'll have more of that social interaction.
Now let's talk about getting them back into the swing of hands-on learning. This is a very heavily STEM curriculum here, so that means that your projects, your science fairs, working in groups, that's all a part of what you do here at Coral Academy.
Right. So we've done a lot of virtual labs and things that require that communication online, but really the prep has gone into what is it going to be like when they're at a table and they're close to each other. So really it's just a lot of reminders. It's a lot of wiping things down and reminding kids to do the same, that sort of thing. But really we're excited to have them together, and I think they're equally as excited.
All right, and I'm excited to see what they can do. Again, these are our future scientists, our engineers, and techies out there, so they're finally getting back into the classroom. Thank you so much, Yolanda. In fact, coming up later this morning, we're going to show you some of those assignments for the students who have already returned and to see what they've been able to accomplish in this short period of diving back in to this hands-on learning experience. So stick around for that. It should be very interesting to see what these creative minds have come up with. I'll send it back to you.
And it'll be interesting to see if, for some students who maybe before teachers had a hard time getting them to do their homework and get their classwork done, if now when they return, they'll be so excited to be back in the classroom, they'll just do it. No questions asked.
Yeah, and I also mentioned this morning, just to go off of that real quickly, Faven, is that maybe some bad habits developed over time. There's a long time at home. Of course, teachers can do all they can through that screen, but now there's going to be the challenge of maybe breaking some of those bad habits and getting them back into the routine that they once knew, but now have to relearn.
Very good point there. Very good point. Thank you so much, Dylan. 6:37 now on your Wednesday. Coral Academy's Sandy Ridge location is gearing up to welcome back all students for full-time in-person learning next week.
All right, our Dylan Kendrick is rocking a lab coat this morning, so that seems like it's potential trouble. Dylan, what's going on out there?
Did I hear Dylan Kendrick or Professor Kendrick?
Excuse me.
Sure if I heard
my
you
fault.
Stand
there,
corrected.
Dave.
Sorry, Professor. Don't flunk me.
Okay, well, now we know. If you don't know, now you know. Let's get on over to Yolanda. You're the principal out here at Coral Academy. Let's talk about getting these kids back in full time, because we're finally to a point, where at least here at this location, where you can offer up that invitation to all students.
Yeah, we have currently a little over 250 students who want to come back. We've got our survey still open, and we're hopeful that more students will join us in the coming days. Really, we're trying to help them transition back, waking up early again. again, getting used to being on a campus, getting used to being hands-on with manipulatives and different things and being with their friends. That's really what we're looking forward to.
Now let's talk about what that transition has been like for the students who've already returned. What's it been like? What are you seeing as the principal here?
We were really amazed by how easy they transitioned back into the classroom. We expected them to have a little bit of difficulty going from their computers and their video games and things back into sitting in a chair and moving around with friends, but really it's gone really well. I think they're just excited to be back, and part of that excitement bleeds into the classroom and helps them do well.
And you know, pre-pandemic, these things didn't really get folks excited. Like they're exciting, but like science fairs and team projects, these are just terms that were part of everyday life. We're reintroducing these types of things to these students. What's that like, getting them back into that team environment?
I think they're novel again more than anything, because they've been away from things like that are in that social structure with each other. Kids are really welcoming that piece back into their world. There's a lot more to do with the distancing that we have to worry about and some different things that we didn't consider before, but really it's been an easy transition overall.
And being heavily a STEM school, I mean, these are our future scientists, our techies, our mathematicians, you name it. Yolanda, thank you so much. And we're going to check back in here with you guys here coming up more this morning. But we're going to dive into some of these projects that these kids have already started working on, some of the ones that have already made that return, getting back into those science fairs, robotics, things like that are happening again. So it's a breath of fresh air to see what those projects will look like. And I want to, of course, share that with you coming up this morning.
Well, thank you, Professor. By the way, I totally cheated off Faven's homework. I hope that's okay.
And Coral Academy's Sandy Ridge location is gearing up to bring back more students to the classroom. But what about the students that have already been back? Well, they're already diving into some hands-on learning. We're going to dive into these experiments. I don't know what they're doing, but we're going to find out next.
Well, kids back in the classrooms mean team projects and more hands-on learning.
Yeah, it's happening at Coral Academy. Fox 5's Dylan Kendrick shows us what the school is doing to get kids excited again. Hey, Dylan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And a lot of students making their way back here next week, but students have already been coming back in waves and already getting back into that hands-on learning experience that they've been without for so long, at least in person. So I want to get on over to the teacher. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how it's been transitioning kids back into the classroom.
My name is Kermit Ayapana, and I'm teaching science at Coral Academy of Science. Well, personally, I like it in class, so for me it was it's a big surprise, and I like it here, and most students as well. The transition was better because we started a little bit earlier, so it was a smooth transition, to be honest.
All right, smooth transition. I love it. Thanks for giving us that perspective. Let's get a student on in here. Ramel, tell me a little bit about what you guys are working on, because you're going to show the entire city right now that you're learning in the class. What is this?
Right, so what we're demonstrating right now is something called a gel electrophoresis chamber, which is a way that scientists can compare different segments of DNA, sometimes in the field of forensics, to try and come up with a match. And so what my classmate is doing right now is she's loading the different DNA samples into the wells of the gel itself. The gel is made out of a porous material which has a bunch of tiny little holes in it. And so when she's done loading them, what we actually do is we put the cap on, which is shown right here, and we turn on our phoresis machine, which sends an electric current through the gel itself. Now, due to DNA's slightly negative nature, it will migrate more to the positive end, the smaller it is. And so the larger segments of DNA don't migrate that far from the original position of the well, but the smaller pieces do. And so this allows us to get a pretty in-depth picture of what the DNA actually looks like.
And you mentioned forensics, so more specifically, how would you be able to use this in the real world with like maybe a specific example?
So in the field of forensics, oftentimes they have to consider a DNA test, say for a criminal case. If there's DNA found at the scene, they would have to prepare it very diligently in order to preserve it in the gel electrophoresis chamber. And so after they can compare the results of what the DNA looks like in the gel to the actual DNA samples that they got from maybe possible suspects or a control variable, different things like that.
Wow, it's impressive stuff that you're learning that at a high school level. Tell me how it was. You know, I don't know, I'm not sure how long you were learning from home during all this, but is this something that you really missed, this hands-on type of experimental stuff in the classroom?
To answer your question, I honestly did miss it very much. I am a hands-on person, and so I like to do a lot of different experiments like this. We started learning this year, August, and we just recently started going back to school once a day. And so I'm actually really happy that we're able to do more experiments in class now, because it gives the student a more hands-on experience, which I think is very valuable.
Last thing for you, Coral Academy here is about to welcome back more students next week. What are your thoughts on that? Are you excited?
I actually am excited because the small class sizes here at Coral are a good thing, but when they're small enough to the point where there's only 4 or 5 students, it's kind of hard to get a full-on class discussion going. And so this new influx of students or students that will be returning to the campus is actually something that I look forward to very much.
Wow, Romel, thank you so much, man. And wow, you taught me something this morning. A lot of big words here, but obviously glad that you know what that means, because it means that you're down the right path to a really cool future, my friend. So keep it up. And another example of what life back in the classroom is like, and it's a breath of fresh air when you hear examples like Romel and just where they can take this education into the future to really contribute to society. I think that's where a lot of these kids are headed. I'm going to send it back to you guys. Well, students at Coral Academy's Sandy Ridge location are gearing up to come back full-time, but what about the students who've already been back? Well, they didn't waste any time. We're going to check in on their robotics team and see what type of hands-on projects. Hey, good morning, everyone. From the lab to the robotics department. So let's check in with their teacher here. Let's just get some perspective from your point of view. What's it been like to get these students back into the classroom?
First of all, I miss my students so much. Having them here creates more productive and a more social environment for them and for us.
All right, a beautiful thing I imagine for you as well. So let's go ahead and meet some of these students that you're excited to get. We got Lauren here. Now, Lauren, tell everyone what this room is used for.
This is our robotics room. This is where we do most everything. As you can see, we have our tools here. Back there are a lot more tools, and a lot of times it's used by the middle school team. The high school team has our own closet in another classroom where we have most of our power tools. But we still like to come in here to work a lot because it's our room. We have cabinets and all that.
So what are some of your classmates working on here?
So over here is Preston. He's another one of our builders. He's also working on the social media team as well as doing Autodesk stuff, which is 3D printing. As you can see, we have some 3D printed stuff on our robot. And that is Tony. She is working on coding because she is one of our coders. She's right now working on connecting the remote, making sure everything works, and troubleshooting basic code.
All right, and so talk about, you were telling me off camera how disappointed you were when, you know, everything kind of shut down. You had things in motion to compete. Tell me where we're at now as far as competitions.
Well, right now the competition is going to be an at-home version of the challenge. We're still working on stuff, so our robot can still move. We're working on a cannon, which was shown earlier, which is going to go here and launch stuff into a net so that we can score points. It's all at home because, unfortunately, COVID happened, so that's what we're doing instead. And so next week, a lot of your classmates are going to be returning too, for just to get things back to somewhat of a normal. What are you thinking about that? Are you excited to see some of them? I'm pretty excited. I know it's kind of honestly terrifying, the idea of COVID, knowing that my family and me are at risk, knowing that some of my friends are at risk, knowing that some of my friends caught COVID. But I'm excited to go back, especially for people like me who are in the special ed department who really have trouble adapting to online because because online is really difficult with a student with disabilities. And that teamwork aspect, is that something that you really miss being gone? Yes, so much. It's really hard to interact with some of the people in my class online. It's hard to interact with my team online. I don't even remember who's in some of my classes online, and I don't get to work with them. I don't get to build stuff. Well, Lauren, you've given us some good perspective. I appreciate you this morning. And again, this is just kind of that visual representation of what life is like back into the classroom. So as CCSD continues to trickle kids back into the class, this is kind of a sneak peek at what some other locations across town are doing for their students. And I can tell you right now, I am immensely impressed with the progress these students are already making back in the class. I'll send it back to you.
Well, Coral Academy's Sandy Ridge location is gearing up to welcome more students back into the classroom next week. So we're checking in with students who've already been in the class to dive into some of these hands-on assignments that they've already got in progress. We're going to check in on them next. Yeah, good morning, everyone. In fact, next week, they're opening up the invitation for all students to come back if, of course, they're willing and comfortable to do so. So we want to get on over to the students who have already been back, because I think the biggest separation between virtual learning and in-class learning, especially at an academy like this, is that hands-on learning that you can't necessarily dive into over a computer. So I got Mr. Diaz to tell me how that transition has been getting some students back into the class.
Well, yeah, well, it's been difficult at times, but you know, we power through it. As with any transition, there can be difficult times, but I love when the kids are in class because they give me energy, and of course, hands-on activity helps a lot of students and be able to put things together.
Yeah, and to move forward, and of course to learn. Mr. Diaz, thank you so much. I want to get on over to one of these students. Antoinette, you're going to talk a little bit about some of these projects that you guys have been able to work on since your return back to school. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe this one right here?
So right now in class we're learning about the respiratory system, which is a system that helps us breathe and function, basically. So how the respiratory system works is that it goes through your nose or your oral cavity, your mouth, then it goes through the pharynx, through the trachea, to the two bronchi that are not on display because this is another model from last year. Then it goes into either one of the lungs, or gas exchange occurs in the alveoli sacs, which you can't see.
Wow, and just these terms that you're using, terms I don't even know, so it just shows you that these kids are hard at work. Do you want to talk maybe like this one here too? This one would be kind of cool to show everyone. Something like this. What is this? What have you guys worked on here?
Ooh, this has the nervous system in some of the veins and arteries here. The nervous system pretty much helps us move our muscles, helps us think, speak, all of that good stuff.
What do you think a future and a career, where do you think that could put you learning some of the stuff that you're learning in this class?
Biomedical and any medical field, because it's a necessity to learn this stuff.
Right, and so hearing that, you know, we're opening up the invitation for all students to return to Coral Academy's Sandy Ridge location, already being here, are you stoked about that, to see some more of your friends, your colleagues?
Absolutely, because hands-on learning is something that I really need as a person, because I can't learn just reading.
Yeah, and so that virtual learning, what was that experience like for you?
Ooh, it was really stressful.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest.
All right, well, you're back, and it sounds like you're getting busy and getting the things done here, which is very impressive, and thank you for kind of explaining what it is that you guys do here. And this was not the first stop. If you missed some of our earlier segments, we hit up the robotics team, very intelligent kids, and it's just really proving this point this morning that there's a little bit of a disconnect when learning virtually. Of course, they're doing everything they can to make that the easiest, but wow, these kids in class learning what they're learning, hopeful for the future, trust me. I'm going to send it back to you guys in the studio.
And I was just like her. I tried one online class in college and did horribly. So some of us are just better hands-on, in person. So it's so nice to see them back in that element.
Yeah,
definitely, Faven.
All right, thank you so much, Dylan.